Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of It's a Great Day for Hockey Talk. And this is a special edition because it's a rewind going all the way back 1992 with the great Rick Tocchet, who, of course, was assistant coach for the Penguins in 16 and 17 when the Penguins won those back-to-back cups. But he was part of the Penguins team on the ice back in 1992 when the Penguins won the second of back-to-back cups for the first time. And, of course, he was playing under the great Scotty Bowman and came to the Penguins late in the season in a big trade that sent Mark Recchi to the Philadelphia Flyers. Rick, do you ever just look back and think back to those days and the special moment of winning the cup as a player? And what do you think about when it comes to your mind?
Yeah, it just hits you. You know, it's like anything. You're driving somewhere and something will remind you of something about winning that year. And then you start, your mind starts going, and then you actually, when you think of that stuff, it actually kind of helps you as a coach, because now you relive moments of different scenarios of that cup run that could help your knowledge as a coach for the present day player. So yeah, I reflect that. You know, there'll be times when maybe I'll see a guy that or an old guy will give me a text, or playing golf with Mario, or Jay Coughlin will talk about some funny stories, or seeing somebody on the road that you haven't seen that was on that team, that we'll relive it. So those are the memories, right? They always say about the memories.
Well, I remember when you were acquired. It's never easy in a big trade like that because the Penguins were saying goodbye to a really good player in Mark Recchi, and he was really tight with Kevin Stevens, who you ended up becoming very tight with. But I remember the night that you were acquired by the Penguins. After a game, Kevin Stevens walking down the hall, and he was saying, well, they soft the trade, and the guy's going to score 50 goals. I can remember him being really upset. And, you came to the team, and it didn't take very long before they fell in love with you. So that's kind of, the way it is when deals are made. And did you feel like you fit in right away? How did you feel as a player coming to Pittsburgh, especially with the rivalry that had existed between the Penguins and Flyers?
Well, it's a big rivalry. Obviously, the way I played, and especially in that building, sometimes wasn't a favorite by the fans, and I understood I'd have to prove myself going to that locker room. But it's funny because Artie and Rex is one of my best friends today, and Artie, obviously, like you're saying, I could just see Artie yelling like that, "Why make the trade?" But when I got there, the next day, Artie invited me to his house, and at the time I was married to Susie, and they invited me to their house for a meal before a game. So he just took me in with open arms, and the rest is history. So I was very lucky to have those type of teammates when I got traded there.
You became noted as the right winger with Mario and Artie playing on that left wing, and I'm trying to kind of remember how that all came together, because obviously in the following season, 92-93, you guys just terrorized the rest of the National Hockey League. But for that stretch drive, how do you remember adjusting to playing with Mario, and what your role was at the beginning, if you will?
Well, it's funny because I always tell the story is that I came from the Flyers. Flyers were a more grinding team, more of a cycle team, and a lot of dumping the puck in. And I remember early on, I was dumping the puck in, and Mario would look at me like, "Hey, I'm not going to go get it. Go get it." Like he's like, "We hold on to the puck here. We want to make plays." And I remember it was I don't know what game it was, but it was like, okay, now I get it. So now it was more of a give and go. I'd give it to Mario, and I tried to race it. Me and Kevin Stevens used to race to the net who would get there first, because that's where all the action was when you play with Mario, because he's going to give you a tap in. So I got a rude awakening early, like, hey, we play a little different than in Philly. You better adjust.
And I remember you guys took a little while to get your bearings. You brought in Shel Samuelson on defense. Maybe the team took a little bit different look, a little bit heavier look to it than it had been under with Mark Recchi on the team, and Paul Coffey, and all of a sudden, there's a strike. There's a players' strike. Do you remember that? Do you remember the strike? You guys were fighting for money that comes from hockey cards, and you were out of work for a couple. I remember going out to that rink in Plum, they called the Golden Mile Ice Arena. You guys had your own practice out there. There were no coaches, just trying to stay in shape for when you might come back and play. Yeah,
that was a period of time, and Jay Coughlin, he was our kind of our Scotty Bowman Jr. He had the whistle, and we would do the drills. That was a big part, because we stayed in shape, and we made sure that once it resumed that we were ready to go. So I remember that old rink there. I think we used to drive with our equipment on. back then. I don't think there was a dressing room there. I think we just put our equipment on. And I remember, I remember Alf Samuelson did on purpose. He'd drive his, I don't know, I think he was driving some kind of Lexus, and he'd have his helmet on driving, just waving to the people on the highway.
You guys had such a great group of guys. Oh my goodness. So you come back and you start playing, and now you're getting on a roll here towards the playoffs. And you get into that postseason, and you run into a Washington Capitals team that was phenomenal. I mean, they were a really good hockey team, and they get a big lead in the series. I'll never forget standing down there and outside the dressing room when you guys all came out of that meeting in Washington down 3-1. And it was obvious that something different had happened, because you never had a meeting like that before a game. It was obvious that you were doing something, circling the wagons. And do you remember that day, that meeting that you had?
Yeah, it was initially with Mario talking to Scotty. And what really, if you look at that, and say, you know more than I do about that defense there, I think they had 2 or 3 20-goal scorers. I had Frady, Sylvain Cote. They had Scott Stevens, Langway. Was it Gary Gadd? They had a couple of guys, Johansson. Their defense was the best in the league by far. That defense core, if that present day, they'd have the best defense score. They were so good, and they had 20-goal scorers back there. So what we devised, instead of getting in, we wanted to basically let their defense carry the puck up. Instead of, what happened is when we'd forecheck so hard, they'd give to the winger, their defense would jump by us, and they'd join the rush. So what we did is we almost trapped it up a little bit. It's hard to say, it wasn't the Jersey trap, but it was like the Mario trap in his own way. So Mario designed this with Scotty Bowman to just play a little possum, and then we countered, and it got us back in the series. And I remember Yogs starting to get his leg. Yogs started to take over that series too. So that was a great tactical coaching thing by Mario and Scotty to devise against that team.
Yeah, I remember they called it the 1-4 delay was what they did. And they also made a couple of adjustments to the lineup. I remember you put Bob Airey out there and really had him zero in, because the right wingers of the Capitals were doing a lot of damage in that series. You had Dino Ciccarelli and Peter Bondra. Both of them were having success. So they put Gordy Roberts back in the lineup. So Gordy and Bobby were trolling that left side of the ice and keeping those right wingers at bay. And then you had the good strategy going. And you came back in the series. And what I remember when the series was over, Terry Murray was the coach of the Capitals. He won Game 7, and he said, "We were beaten by one man." Now, we all know that's impossible, but Mario was an absolute beast defensively in that series. 200-foot game. You talk about 200-foot game. He was bringing it, wasn't he?
Well, listen, great players have to adjust in different moments, and Mario played. He won the Selke, the Art Rod. He won every trophy in that series because the way he played. And his defensive, I saw some tracking by him where he tracked it, stripped the guy with a puck and went the other way. He did that a bunch of times. I haven't seen many players be able to do that in my lifetime, and he did it to a T that series.
Then you get into a series with the Rangers, and Adam Graves whacks him on the hand and breaks his hand. You guys really believed in yourselves, though. You guys, Ronnie Francis, you got a chance to see what he could do when the pressure was on him to elevate his game, yourself as well. Well, how invigorating was it to beat the Rangers after all that crap?
Yeah, let's see. Listen, team set recipe was to play. I don't like to do dirty, but very tough against our team, and a lot of stuff behind the, away from the refs and things like that. They tried to drag you down, and we stuck with it. Like I said, Ronnie Francis. A bunch of different guys, but I think the leadership group there when Mario went down in the system, and just the way we approached the game with Mario being out, the professionalism, I guess, is really won us that series. They had a great team, Rangers. That was no easy series, but I thought we got our legs, and maybe they relaxed thinking Mario being out, they were going to win the series.
You guys won 11 straight games on the way to the Stanley Cup that year. That's after the Chicago Blackhawks had won 11 straight, leading up to the final. So you weren't. It's amazing, right?
Yes, it is. And do that. Yes.
I remember you having a good series against the Rangers. I felt like you were a big part of why you guys were able to overcome that loss of Mario Lemieux. You go against the Bruins. Then you're going to go against Chicago, and your old buddy Mike Keenan comes into town for a couple of games. And if you remember, Dickie, first 10 minutes of that hockey game of Game 1, the Hawks were bringing it physically. And they had you guys kind of looking over your shoulders a little bit even. They were playing a way more physical brand than most teams had played against you. I mean, body, forecheck, that kind of heavy game, And you guys, you sucked it up and found a way to win that first game in a dramatic fashion. Where does that stand out in your mind, that comeback that day in game one, that night when Mario scored that goal late?
Yeah, I realized it's a great description of how the game went is we weren't, Mike Keenan, once a guy passed the puck, I knew, and I told guys, he's going to instruct whether it's Chris Chelios or, Jeremy Roenick or whoever, or Dan Noonan or whoever, finish your check. So you pass the puck, one steamboat, two steamboats, even three steamboats, they're going to finish your check. Nowadays, you can't do what you could do back then. So we weren't used to it. Then what we started to do is we started to use our skills. So we passed the puck quicker. We got out of the hole a little bit quicker. And I think that's when the Hawks couldn't stay with us. If you look at we won one game 6-5, and we won one game 1-0. So we could win it either way. What I loved about that playoff run, because when we had to shut it down and win 1-0, we could do that. But if we had to have I call it river hockey, back and forth action, we could play that way too. So, but we learned that early in that first game that, hey, they're going to finish every check, so we're going to have to change our approach when it comes to moving the puck quicker.
Did you do you hold that particular run special to your heart because of what you had done throughout your career? You had a chance. You played in a Game 7 against the Edmonton Oilers earlier in your career, and this was your opportunity now to finally live the dream. And I remember I think I sent you a clip of an interview that we had done with you right before Game 7, and you were talking to that twinkle in your eye about, living that dream of winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, you go through your career, I had 2 kicks at the can my first 3 years in the AHL, and I took it for granted. And then the Flyers went through some transition period of, whether to go young or whatever. And I got lucky to get traded to Pittsburgh, and I go, this is my opportunity. If there's ever an opportunity, and I look around that dressing room, the way that, I loved Craig Patrick, the way he treated the players, and the way the city, the fans. This was my opportunity that I was going to do whatever it took. Whether you're hurt, injury, or whatever, I wanted to play. This was my opportunity, so I didn't want to take it for granted.
Toughness was always something that Mario felt like he needed at times in his career. And you came along, and 2 big boys playing on either side of him had to be a big relief to him. But how did you feel about that role, about just being that guy playing riding shotgun with Mario Lemieux and playing the Rick Tocchet style that you played?
Yeah, I think that I remember talking to Scotty years after and Craig Patrick, but I took that to heart. I mean, you play with Mario. I wasn't the biggest guy, but listen. Every game, some cities you go in, some teams, they take liberties against Mario, and I felt it was, if I had to go after, a Chris King, who would go after Mario, those type of guys that, tied to whoever, that I had to do it. I mean, it's something that I wasn't afraid to do, and I do in the long run. Listen, I scored 48 goals playing with Mario. I mean, there was like 10 of them. Stag, you could have scored. Just go to the net. So I was very, he was my meal ticket, so I wanted to protect my meal ticket.
Can you tell us, just get a little glimpse of what kind of things you would do to keep players honest? Like, what was it? Was it something you would say? I mean, they knew how tough you were. So would you say something like, you go after him and we're going to go after this guy on your team? Or what was your strategy from a diplomatic standpoint, if you will?
Well, you're glad you brought it up. Playing the Rangers, I remember, Kosher and those guys would take runs at Mario. So I remember one shift I said, well, I'm going after Mark Recchi. And I remember, I knew Mark from the play when I played in the Canada Cup. So I remember going after him. I had a glove on. I punched him as hard as I could in the face and went after him. And basically, by their bench, hey, Leach is next. I mean, that's the way you have to approach that type of game. Those are the sort of things. I remember playing Buffalo, and I remember, and this is a funny story. Scotty wasn't too happy with me, but Brad May was. They had a tough team, but when Brad May was running around, I fought him. I knew that we were going to play Buffalo 2 or 3 times in the next month, and I said, you always pick your spots to fight. I knew I could have to fight this guy. I remember fighting him 3 times in 2 weeks where we were in Buffalo, and he was running around, and I think I told Phil Bork or somebody, his line come off early because May was on the ice, and I jumped on for Bork. Scotty wasn't too happy on, and I went. I remember I kind of gave it to Brad. He was a very tough guy, and I was giving it to him. And I just remember looking at our bench, and I saw Mario, and just the confidence in the guys. You know, I knew early on that I'd have to do that once in a while, and it just kind of. I remember we won the game too, so those are the sort of things you have to do every once in a while. But Scotty didn't talk to me for a while. He wasn't too happy with that.
You talked about Alfie wearing the helmet while he was driving to the practice. What I remember is just how loose you guys were as a group. Like throughout that playoff run, there was some kind of confidence that you guys had and love for one another. You guys were really good buddies off the ice, and you had a great chemistry, I thought, as guys, as pals off the ice too.
Yeah, very close team. A lot of pranks. I think when there's a lot of pressure on a team and there's big moments, I think you have to have that looseness. Kevin Stevens was unbelievable, you know, at that. Ulf Samuelsson, you know, just whether the card games, the japping. I remember we used to grab a couple things. We used to already. It was like we'd grab his underwear every time and throw in the garbage. And I remember he said he must have bought 100 pairs of. He'd had to buy 100 pairs of underwear because he couldn't find them. And then we took a spark plug out of his car, and his poor wife had to come pick him up because he didn't know how to fix the car. So he just told the guys at the dealership, just put a new starter in. So he had to put like a $2,000 starter in. That was just we took the spark plug out. So that's the sort of stuff we used to do. Just a lot of different pranks like that.
And so now, you know, you guys win the cup that night in Chicago. Just take me back to the feeling of finally doing it and what it was like when you went in that locker room and everybody was celebrating. Do you still have a good memory of that?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like as an assistant coach, just all the hard work, you know, the injuries that people overcome, the broken bones, and the guys that coming up. I think it was from Cleveland or Muskegon, I forget. They came up to supply some games, some minutes for us. That comes in your head. You know, the being very thankful for getting traded, and this the acceptance of the city, like and the players coming from a heated rival. That, you know, I mean, I had people I remember telling me they hated my guts, and you know, at the end of it all, you know, they're hugging you. So that there's a lot of different feelings, Staggy, when you lift that cup.
Well, I'll tell you, what a thrill it has been to be able to talk to you about it again. And, you know, it was also obviously a thrill to have you come back to Pittsburgh as a coach and win 2 more as a coach in Pittsburgh. So you're forever part of the fabric of the city of Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh Penguins. I wish you all the luck in the world out west, Rick, when we get back to playing. And I know you're going to have success wherever you go. Thanks a lot for taking the time. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it because I miss Pittsburgh a lot being out here. And it's good to bring back the memories. Thank you.
That's Rick Tocchet. This has been a great day for Hockey Talk Rewind, brought to you by PPG Paints. I'm Paul Steigerwald. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed our conversation with the great Rick Tocchet.